JB here, July 30th, 2024, Tuesday, 2:50 p.m. About an hour and 10 minutes to close. Another rocky session today. S&P was off nearly a percent before. IWM is showing the divergence. It's in the green right now, holding that right around that 220 area, 222 area. But the big thing is earnings after the close. Microsoft, some other names, but I think Microsoft, it's key that it reports a decent quarter. I think that'll be where the proverbial poop hits the fan. But some other interesting things of note: you have all the chip names and semi names still getting destroyed. Nvidia was down all the way down to 104 earlier, and I have a little slide on that in a second. It's down at 105.27. Just it hit 102.54, just pretty remarkable. And you have to remember the split. So uh, it kind of helps put things in perspective. I like to pull back charts. That's why sometimes you can do 1 minute charts, you can do dailies, you can do weekly. Some people do weekly charts to help, I guess, keep things in perspective. Because if you look at some of the intraday swings or even daily swings, sometimes that might not give you the best picture. But the SPY, it's still right at the 50-day. Well, the 50 days 542. We're 541.20 right now. Be nice if we got back over there. We were just over 542.50 at about 220. So if we can close above that, that'd be great. I'll take 551, 541 for now. And then that other 544 area, just important. And as the longer we stay around 541, if we close underneath that, the more open I'll be adding, open to be adding more hedge positions. But I'm probably not going to ride anything on the head side into the Microsoft earnings. A lot of the stuff that I have is already either taken it on the chin or I've already offset it with a little bit of hedge puts. So that's kind of the game plan for now, and we'll see how things play out. But again, you take a look at the small caps, still setting up like a potential bull flag. Even with today, if we hold 222 or so, still setting up nicely. So individual names. So I got those Broadcom puts earlier. I should have got those last week as well, but I went with the Lamb, which still worked out. But take a look, the stock is off since the June 20th seems like the key day. That's when all these names start to sell off. I don't know if it was the ASML. I forget what was the big catalyst. Actually, ASML was only a couple weeks ago, but all the way it's under its 50-day moving average. Hit the lower Bollinger Band. I went and locked some of the puts out for 50%, and then I just closed the last because it feels like sometimes we have these afternoon bounces, and I didn't be in a spot where if this rallies another 1.5, 2%, the puts are going to lose value very quickly. So I locked the rest in, and then a name I'll revisit maybe tomorrow, especially if we can't hold that 50 day on the Spire 541 area. That's that. So just to put things in perspective, and I posted the charts on FinTwit as well and in the chat room. But since June 20th, Nvidia is down 22%, right? Wow, that's crazy, remarkable. I mean, it's only a month and a half. But then you look, and year to date going into June 20th, it was up 175% at its peak. So that kind of helps kind of put things in perspective. Uh, does it mean there's more downside? I can't rule it out, especially it's like the snowball effect, right? Some people uh, holding on. Maybe they're adding on dips, and eventually those folks start giving up on adding the dips, and then people say, "Wow, I'm up. Let me start locking some in," and it just becomes a self-fulfilling situation. But for now, I'm trying to think some of the catalyst, I guess. But Microsoft, I think, is going to be key for the tech sector. And I think some of these chip names, I'm not saying they're oversold for a bounce, but that's one of the reasons why I went for AMD for some calls. So unfortunately, because of this whole pullback in the chip space, AMD had some continuation. But I think it was 144 yesterday at the highs, then gave it all back yesterday. And then today, all the way down to 134 before bouncing. It said 138.29, so a nice $4 bounce. I think it's down 12 in the last 14 sessions. And it was 185 on June 9th or June 10th. And here it is, it hit 134. So pretty much a $60 pullback. Not much in the way of catalyst, right? The downgrades. I think there's been some price target changes, but it's just been like a sympathy move in all these names, and some of it was I guess Google was kind of, I wouldn't say the nail in the coffin, but it just helped push things down to the next stage to the downside on fears that this AI boom has been overblown, right? I guess we're going to find out at the close here today. But I was looking to salvage some of the AMD puts, but the premiums kind of held up. And if you look at the implied move, I think it's 8.8%, $12 implied move. And my calls are down, well, a little less than 50% now. I am I gonna, I have the 165 calls. Do I think it's going to rally to 165 tomorrow? that would take a huge beat and raise, a huge surprise. But if it rallies 12% or even 12 to 14% or even gets 148, 149, those calls will gain some value. So I don't want to be in a spot where I lock the loss in and then watch this rally. I already did the Broadcom puts to kind of offset some of those positions. So I'll continue to hold those into the close today. Um, and again, it's down 12 of the last one. I can count if I do it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, 12 of the past 14 sessions. And the 2 sessions that it was green were doji candles, meaning indecisiveness. And it's not like there was a huge bounce. So are folks pricing in like some crazy miss, some kind of surprise that I mean, only a couple of weeks, 3 weeks ago was $195. They announced an acquisition with an AI company. I think there'll be some surprise or even in line and at least some decent guidance. I think it'll do well. So that's AMD. Gilead, it is day 1, 2, 3, day 5 to the upside, barely, but it's holding in there despite the overall market. And then you have some earnings in the biotech space. Merck is getting destroyed. Its worst day in quite some time. Who else was it? It was Pfizer. Pfizer's actually in the green. Uh, but all things considered, it's just continues to go. So locked those August 80s in yesterday, the last of those for over 100%. And then I went and got those September strikes. At some point, I looked to lock just a couple of those in before their earnings. Really nice setup here on Gilead. Uh, I'm not gonna knock on wood, but iRobot's green today. I was possibly looking to get some more strikes. Maybe I'll wait for a day 2 continuation tomorrow. No rush, and they'll report earnings next week. So I'm not going to do anything there. And then Western Digital, similar to what's going on with AMD, just a huge move. It was $80 in the middle of June. It's down here at $64, and they'll report earnings after close tomorrow. I haven't traded WDC in quite some time, so I'll probably just wait post earnings to try and trade that one for upside. PayPal, I was talking about on the rant this morning. The beat and raise and the buyback authorization up to 6 billion from 5 billion, and just they painted a better picture than they have in the past, and they've been in kind of this mode of trying to restructure a little bit. I thought once it started to go in the pre-market and right at the bell, I figured this is the start of a move back over into the 70s. So I went and got some calls. The premium seemed very inexpensive on a risk reward basis to have 2.5 weeks of time on the $70 strikes when the stock was up over 9%. I to see the premiums on those calls for 41 cents or 40 cents, whatever I got the calls at, I thought that was pretty inexpensive on a risk reward basis. But then the stock kind of floundered. It looked like it was going to break under $63. I didn't want to lose all the premium on it, so I sold some. I sold them out, salvaged them for a loss. Uh, I'll revisit at some point. The disappointing thing is that PayPal should have been moving up block, and it did in the pre-market and right after the bell. But then Square went up to 62 and change, and just did it hit 63, and then just couldn't find its footing. Just so disappointing. So I was making fun. Did it hit almost hit 62? I wasn't making fun, but I was talking about the Morgan Stanley analyst adjusting his price target on Square today ahead of earnings on Thursday, which makes absolute no sense to me. But obviously, looks like they're nailing it pretty good so far. So, well, Square's only off 1%, but I'll continue to hold my Square calls. That one's disappointing. Oh, and just the longer term picture on PayPal. You start looking at some of these areas, and you say, "Wow, if this is a story was going from I wouldn't call it just garbage. It wasn't doing much to finally this is the next leg of their growth and their margins and things like that. Maybe this is the start of a move into the 70s and 80s for PayPal. So definitely a name I'll be watching, but I don't want to sit there. I have a decent amount of positions on, and the market's kind of a little iffy right now. The SPY was breaking under support, so I didn't want to be in a position where that went south on me. That's PayPal. That's Block. Um, Western Digital. Did I already talk about that one? I guess I did. Also, Microsoft, when they report after the close, let's see what their implied move is. Microsoft is so it's a $21.90 move, right? So Microsoft's 21.94 and it's trading at 420, right? So if you look at Microsoft, it has a 5.2% implied move. So their last earnings, so last quarter closed up 1.8% after earnings. So that's a premium crush. The quarter before that, it dropped, it closed down 2.6% the next day. The quarter after that, up 3%. The quarter before that, down 3%. And then the quarter before that, it was actually up 7%. So that probably made some money on the call side. Uh, but it seems like so the average move over the last 8 quarters is 4% on Microsoft. The implied move is 5.2%. So uh, the implied move is pretty high historically speaking. But if there is some kind of crazy move, and then you look at the chart on Microsoft, and it's come off from 470 only since the start of July. So you're talking a $50 move to the downside. What is that? 50 into 470. I'm just trying to do the math. So like what is it, 11, 12%. I'd have to go pull up. I don't have the exact numbers there. But not saying it's going back to that level if they have a strong beat and raise, but I think it could do 5 or 6%, sure. But to me, the risk reward's not there on the option side, so I'll just probably pass. But I am hoping for a decent quarter, some great commentary in regards to the AI side of business, the cloud business, and it kind of puts to rest Google's earnings last week, and then if that happens, then we still have Meta this week, we have Apple, we have Amazon, and then of course we have the Fed tomorrow. So I think I already said it's 89% probability that the Fed's going to cut rates in September. It's like a 95% probability the market's pricing it that there's going to be no rate cut tomorrow. I am hoping that there's no rate cut, no nothing, because I think the market will not receive that very well at all. Markets don't like surprises. Um, so it'll be an interesting afternoon. And then we have the jobs report at the end of the week. So, and here's the SPY trying to break 540 again, 541. So I mean, as much as I want to try and get a hedge here, I'll probably just pass, and then we'll see how Microsoft and some of the other names. There's other names reporting after close. I think Arista Networks. Who else? Let's see. Do I even have this up? I don't even have it up today. Microsoft, AMD, Starbucks, Arista, First Solar. Oh, that'll be interesting. Match.com. And that's about it, folks. All right, let's have a great afternoon. Let's have a good quarter from Microsoft. I'm trying to think of some of the other names. Oh, VKTX, just again, disappointing. Here it is right at lows, 56.64. It almost feels like the shorts involved in VKTX, because over $1 billion in shares are sold short. It's like they're laughing, they're mocking all the bulls on VKTX because they it's like they think it's probably like easy money because it just doesn't, it's probably going to need some kind of buyout or some major catalyst for it to really break out of this rut it's stuck in, because it seems like every time it seems like makes no sense that for on their earnings call they had their phase study approved to be pushed right into a phase 3 study, and you would think the stock would, that if it was trading in the 60s before that news, it should be in the 70s or 80s, but it's not. So and that's, I mean, the market is what it is, right? That's 56.68 right now is what the market's willing to pay for VKTX. It doesn't, as much as I want to try and rationalize it, but I can't. It is what it is. But I'll just continue to hold my September strikes. And that's it, folks. Let's have a great afternoon. I'll be back rock and roll.